Life is old, very old. As a matter of fact, life is older than many of the stars that are out there floating in the universe. We tend to view life as being frail and fleeting, and perhaps individual lives are, but we are all a part of a process that is so ancient it has managed to outpace nature's premier energy-producing mechanism. Nuclear fusion, the thing that powers the stars. And you may have noticed that I made a little oopsie in my description of life. I said that it was a process, and within today's paradigm, you aren't really allowed to say that. It is considered to be some kind of logical fallacy. You see, if the thing that powers the stars is nuclear fusion, then the thing that powers life is evolution, and evolution is considered to be random. From this perspective, there is no process because it isn't proceeding anywhere. There is no progress being made. There is no regress being made. There is no end result. This is what's taught in schools. This is what you are expected to believe if you want to have any sort of legitimate credibility on anything. I've been analyzing this perspective for quite some time because I find it to be very interesting, and I've noticed that it only works under one condition. There is a linchpin. There is an idea that they have to sell you, and if you buy into it, then everything else can be built on top of that. And this is this idea of randomness. And I phrased it as an idea because that is ultimately what is taking root within the mind. It isn't randomness that's the problem. Actually, randomness is extremely important. It is an attitude towards it that is being sold. What randomness is, the meaning of randomness is for something to simply be unknown. It is some kind of edge of intelligence. It is the inability to predict. Within statistics, it is for any given set of possibilities to have an equal probability. A game that is truly 50-50 is a random game. What randomness really entails is a lack of perception. It is an inability to screen something through logic. Technically, it means a lack of prediction, an inability to predict. But since our perception is purely based on prediction, it translates to a lack of perception. The way that our brains work, we create these reality models, and a reality model is in essence your brain saying, I expect the world to be like this. I expect reality to operate like this. And when it doesn't, an error occurs. There is a flag on the play. And I went more in depth on the metaphysics behind this in my video on time travel, which I'll have on the screen. But when this word randomness is used, it is normally used to instill a sentiment about reality. It's meant to make you feel a certain way. For example, we can see within quantum physics that the universe most likely sprang forth from random quantum events. And as a result of this, people like to imply that the universe has no purpose. However, there's nothing factual about that statement. That's just a belief. Claiming that the universe is engulfed by randomness doesn't really tell you anything about reality itself, but it tells you everything that you need to know about us. What this is all about is perception, whatever you want to call it, intelligence, consciousness, nous, mind. This appears to be our stage. We are flanked on all sides by randomness. It has us completely surrounded. And when you analyze this situation, it is ultimately manifested as consciousness existing within some kind of bubble. And I've been talking about this bubble in my most recent videos, which I'll have on the screen. And I phrase this bubble as some kind of machine or apparatus that we are inside of. But to take things a step further, the way that this object may actually function could be something closer to an egg or perhaps some kind of womb. And if it is a womb, then the umbilical cord to it would be what we call randomness. It is what is facilitating this entire process. It is what is delivering us our nutrients, as it were. Now, what do I mean by all of this? If you try and examine this bubble that we are all inside of, if you are the philosophical type, what you will eventually discover is that it is knowledge itself. Somehow, some way, we are inside of knowledge, or rather, we are knowledge. You could call it information, patterns, connections, relationships. If you are a more spiritual type, you could call it samsara. If you look at the history of philosophy and science, this is clearly what was implied by this term matter. It is what we all refer to as things or boundaries or categories. It is categories that can be placed within other categories that can be placed within other categories, and you can just keep going and going with this. As a matter of fact, whenever you examine the etymology of the term matter, its root word is mother, which brings us back to this whole womb metaphor. It is the container that holds everything that we consider to be reality within it. It is what it means for there to be things. It is the thing. And I have taken all of these varying terms and explanations, and I have couched them all under an umbrella term that I call memory. But here's the catch. Memory is timeless. It is something that exists outside of time. And to understand this, we can do a little mind game. If you can concede that reality is information, I mean, we can see this via science, that reality is fundamentally information, or for simplicity's sake, patterns. If reality is pattern, then what exactly is a pattern? A pattern is something that never changes. It stays the same forever. As soon as any inkling of a change occurs, that is the end of that pattern. But the paradox here is, since reality is information or pattern, this thing that never changes, how is anything happening at all? And this is where randomness comes into play. This is due to increasing entropy or increasing randomness. Randomness is what is facilitating everything that happens, or to rephrase it, there is something that doesn't make sense to us that is causing everything to happen. There is something that lies beyond our perception that is facilitating all that occurs. And you don't have to think very hard to see correlations as to what is actually occurring here. Entropy isn't exactly what it appears to be. It is some kind of shadow that's being cast by a cosmic presence or some kind of cosmic principle. And I use this word shadow very intentionally because a very fitting metaphor for it would be darkness. It is something that obscures vision. You could say that it is an unseen force that is ubiquitous. It is everywhere at all times, and it is guiding everything that occurs. The general consensus is that entropy increases over time, and this simple fact alone should be pinging off alarm bells that there is some kind of force involved. I mean, this is how forces operate. Look at gravity. Or at the very least, it is being mediated by some kind of attractor. But it isn't a force that pulls on material objects. It doesn't pull on particles. It somehow pulls on reality itself. And you may notice that I keep using naughty words like guide and attractor. This idea that there is some kind of telos or purpose seems impossible to escape, because what this attractor does is transform information. It erodes boundaries and categories. It is antithetical to memory. You could look at evolution. Biological life would be impossible without evolution. However, whenever you examine what evolution is, you have the four major arms: gene drift, gene flow, mutation, and natural selection. If you take mutation, for example, mutation is a break in pattern. It is the rupture of boundary. It is the dissolution of memory. This break in pattern is traditionally described as imperfect copying or replication. It is viewed as some kind of genetic error. But this is a very poor choice of words because, funnily enough, this imperfection is what directly leads to the survival of the species. It is what facilitates survival. Everything in all places at all times is being transformed. That's what this factor does. It transforms information. This apparatus that we are in, or this bubble, has historically been referred to as the logos, and the philosopher Heraclitus used fire to represent it. Reality is on fire, but it is some kind of spiritual fire or metaphysical flame that is constantly wicking us. In one of my really old videos, I expressed it as us being cooked by time, because that's what fire is. It is a tool for creation. We cook with it. We forge with it. We cut with it. We are all being transformed. We are inside of the womb that is being fed by the umbilical cord of randomness. We are in some kind of giant alchemical pot that is being wicked by the flames of entropy. We have some kind of destiny, but destiny isn't what you think that it is. We're just accustomed to viewing time as being some kind of line. I mean, we literally call it a timeline. We view the future as being out in front of us. However, I don't think that this is how time works. Time is some kind of act of becoming. We aren't heading towards the future, but rather we are becoming it. We are fulfilling our destiny. To us, the unknown looks like oblivion. This is what it looks like. To be pulled into entropy appears to be disintegrated, pulled into some kind of nothingness. However, this is what transformation looks like. This is what destiny looks like. This is what it means to grow, to break memory, to leave your old self behind, to become something new, to become unrecognizable to yourself. If I had to distill life down to its very essence, it would be transformation. Terence McKenna used to say that reality was some kind of engine that conserves novelty. But what novelty is newness. It is randomness. It is the unexpected. It is the inability to predict. Randomness is some kind of veil that destiny exists on the other side of. It's kind of like if you had perfect knowledge of the future, time would disappear. It would all collapse into this one thing. The difference between you and tomorrow is randomness. Tomorrow isn't real. Putin could press the button right now and there would be no tomorrow for anyone. Tomorrow exists within the imagination. It is us contacting the imagination. If you say today that tomorrow you're going to go and eat ice cream and you wake up the following day and you actually go and do that, did tomorrow come or did the imagination become real? What I believe is that this thing that is happening to us is some kind of process of the imagination becoming real. I talked about this in my most recent members video that the imagination and destiny are somehow the same thing. Nothing is predetermined. However, there still is a destiny. This is us, this living paradox of fate and free will coexisting. Free will is the path that you choose to take to your destiny. All roads lead to the imagination. However, the amount of roads that lead to it are infinite. Life is some kind of living art piece. Our lives are like these weird 5D paintings, and the decisions that we are confronted with are like the strokes of the brush on the canvas. This is why I think that beauty is so subjective and crucial to the human experience, because destiny is ultimately beautiful. Beauty is the acknowledgement of something reaching its fullest potential. It's sort of like in scripture when reality is being created, all of these different facets of reality, the God of Christianity constantly says that it's good. That's what beauty is. It is to look at it and realize that it is as it should be. It has realized its full potential. It has reached its destiny. And I want to keep this video short, but the key takeaway from this video, I'd even say that the key takeaway from all of my videos is that you do indeed have a destiny. Everything does. I can clearly see it. Destiny is the grandest of all archetypes. The Jungian realization of the self is the shadow of destiny being cast onto the human being because, for whatever reason, we appear to be the only creatures on this planet that is aware that it's there, that are aware of its existence. It is why we are able to ask why, due to us being this questioning animal. We can clearly see that there is this giant looming question that is dawning on us. And I've been calling this question the mystery since I started this channel. In the same way that plants are attracted to the sun, we are attracted to destiny. It is erotic, but not erotic in some kind of sexual way. It is in the purest form of eros. Some people run towards it, some people run away from it, but you are locked into a relationship with it. Pay attention. This is what everything is doing if you actually sit down and pay attention. Everything lives in anticipation of its own destiny. It is where our will to live comes from. You never find it funny that people who have achieved the pinnacles of material success, they have more money than they could ever reasonably need. They never just ride off into the sunset. They never book a flight to some island paradise and sip coconuts until they croak. After about a year tops of doing that, something inside of you will start to bug you. You will start to have weird dreams. You will begin having this strange internal dialogue with someone who you could only say is you, but they are disappointed in you. They are disagreeing with everything that you are doing. And this is because you cannot pay destiny to go away. You cannot buy yourself out of it. Since the very first video on this channel, whether I knew it or not, this is what I have been referring to, or this is what has been speaking through me. In my very first video, I used the calling of Matthew. When Christ first saw Matthew, he simply told him to get up and follow me. And Matthew did it with no hesitation because that's what destiny is. That's what it does. Matthew saw his destiny calling him, and he plunged head first into the unknown. This is what the parable of the sower was about. This is what the parable of the talents was about. We all have a soul, and these souls are like seeds that have been planted. We are being grown into something. We are being nourished by destiny. And the entire point of this process is to reach your maximum potential. That is what destiny is, your maximum potential. And the way that you reach your maximum potential is by becoming a friend of the pattern. And what this entails is you viewing your life as an event, a synchronistic event that is taking place within some kind of meaning machine. It is for you to view your life as a piece of art, and reality is like this living storybook, and everything in it is on its own hero's journey that is heading towards its own unique destiny. And the true gem of all of this, if you want to call it the final exam of life, it is for you to love your destiny, amor fati, to love your fate. And the only way that you can accomplish this is by seeing the beauty inside of it. Whether you never got anything that you actually ever wanted, or even if you got everything you could possibly dream of, to see the beauty in them both. There is so much meaning to be had with having children and starting a family, but there is just as much meaning in staying single for the rest of your life. There are all of these different paths that we can all take. And the modus operandi of this entire simulation, if you want to call it that, is that no one can have the experience of the other. If you have a family, you can't go back and be single. And if you choose to stay single forever, you can't turn back time and start a family, because that's what this thing is about. It is about generating complex emotions. It is about disappointment, missed opportunities, heartbreak, broken dreams. It is about love. It is about crazy good luck. Luck so good that you feel like you have on the world's thickest plot armor. Feeling is the true currency of this experience that we are all having. And I believe that the goal is for when you are older and reflecting on life, for you to have an emotion that is so complex, you don't know what to do with it. You don't know if you are crying because you are happy or sad. You don't know if you are singing because you are happy or sad. And at that point, the only thing left for you to do is to give this emotion up to some kind of higher power, because I think that this is ultimately what they are interested in. It is this returning to this baby-like state. This is what I want to do. I want to fall in love with my destiny. I want to reach my fullest potential. But in order for me to do that, I have to evolve.